Look, I'm going to be real with you for a second. Every single offseason, we hear the same thing from every team. We're focused on this year. We're not looking back. But when John Schneider stepped in front of those cameras in spring training and said what he said, it actually felt different. He looked his guys dead in the eyes and told them, "We're not defending anything. We're not defending the AL East. We're not defending the American League. We're attacking 2026 like we did 25. We're trying to win the division. We're trying to win the World Series." That's not bulletin board material. That's a mindset. And if you've been watching this Blue Jays team closely, you already know that mindset is backed up by real moves, real talent, and a front office that finally seems to know exactly what it's doing. So let's actually break down how Toronto built this roster, because I think a lot of people are sleeping on just how methodical this construction has been. Start with the rotation, because that's where this whole thing begins. A year ago, if you brought up the Blue Jays' starting rotation in a serious baseball conversation, people would have changed the subject. It was a legitimate concern. It was the kind of weakness that gets teams bounced in October before they even get comfortable. And then this offseason happened, and I genuinely had to double-check the transactions page because it didn't feel real. Dylan Cease. They signed Dylan Cease. We're talking about a pitcher who was in the Cy Young conversation not long ago, a guy with elite swing-and-miss stuff, and the kind of mentality that shows up in October. That signing alone changes who the Blue Jays are as a team. But they didn't stop there. They brought Shane Bieber back into the fold, a pitcher whose story over the last couple of years has been one of the most compelling in baseball, a guy who, when healthy, is genuinely difficult to square up. And then they added Cody Ponce, who just won the KBO MVP in 2025 and is coming over with something to prove on the biggest stage. Now stack that on top of what they already had. Kevin Gausman is still one of the better pitchers in this league when he's locked in. Trey Yesavage is a name you're going to be hearing a lot more this season. Jose Barrios has been reliable in ways that don't always show up on a highlight reel, but absolutely show up in the standings. The one thing people will point to is the lack of a true left-handed presence in the rotation outside of Eric Lauer, and that's a fair critique. But when you're generating the kind of strikeout numbers this group is capable of, you can have that conversation and still feel pretty good about where you stand. Both Cease and Gausman finished in the top 20 in strikeouts last season. Think about that. The front office identified a glaring weakness and turned it into what might be a top 3 rotation in the American League in the span of a single offseason. That's not luck. That's a plan being executed. Now here's something that doesn't get talked about enough when people discuss the Blue Jays, and it genuinely drives me crazy because it might be the most important thing this team has going for it. Their defense is elite. Not good, not solid, elite. In 2025, Toronto was one of the best defensive teams in all of baseball, and nothing about this roster construction suggests that's going to change. Andres Gimenez and Ernie Clement in the middle of the infield is the kind of combination that makes pitchers breathe easier. Those two combined for 26 outs above average last year. That number is not a typo. When you've got Gausman and Barrios on the mound, two pitchers who live and die by the ground ball, having that kind of defense behind them isn't just helpful, it's a force multiplier. And then you look at the bullpen addition of Tyler Rogers, who had the 6th highest ground ball percentage among all relievers last season at 62.1%, and you start to realize this isn't a coincidence. The Blue Jays are intentionally building a roster where the defense and the pitching philosophy reinforce each other. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base, Dalton Varsho, Alejandro Kirk, these aren't just offensive pieces. These are guys who contribute on both sides of the ball. Last year, every single one of the top 5 defensive teams made the postseason. Every one of them. Toronto should absolutely be in that conversation again in 2026. Now I have to address the Bo Bichette situation, because if I don't, the comments are going to be full of people asking about it anyway. Losing Bo Bichette hurts. There's no way to spin that into something it's not. He was a cornerstone of this franchise, a guy who gave everything he had every single night, and he brought an offensive energy to that lineup that you simply cannot replace one for one. Anyone who tells you otherwise isn't being straight with you. But here's what I will say. The front office didn't just shrug and move on. They went out and signed Kazuma Okamoto, who was one of the most coveted international bats available this offseason, and for good reason. This man spent his career in Japan putting up numbers that are almost hard to comprehend. We're talking about 279 career home runs and nearly 900 RBIs before he ever set foot in a major league stadium. Now, we've seen international transitions go sideways before, so I'm not sitting here telling you it's guaranteed to be seamless. But the scouting reports on Okamoto are glowing, his power is legitimate, and the Blue Jays needed a right-handed bat with thump in that lineup. He gives them that. And even with Anthony Santander dealing with an injury that's going to keep him out 5 to 6 months, this lineup is still genuinely scary. Think about what Toronto can put on the field when everyone is healthy and clicking. The depth is real, the talent is real, and the approach at the plate under Schneider's system has shown consistent improvement year over year. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to when I look at this roster. It's not built around one superstar carrying everything. It's not a team that lives and dies by 3 guys performing at peak levels simultaneously. It's built with intention across all 3 phases. The pitching depth can survive the grind of 162 games. The defense takes pressure off every pitcher on that staff. The lineup has enough moving parts that even when one piece is missing, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. That's what a legitimate World Series contender looks like. That's what sustainable winning looks like. John Schneider didn't just say the right things in spring training to fire up the media cycle. He said them because this team has earned the right to walk into 2026 with that kind of confidence. The Blue Jays front office turned a pretender into a contender, and now they're trying to turn a contender into a champion. Based on everything I've seen this offseason, I'm not betting against them.